Okay, so this is Isaiah Diesel at RG Podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today. And I do want to say right off the top, this podcast is not in any way, shape, or form intended to choose candidates. A little bit too late for that as it is. One, two, or political party, either. And you could argue, well, it's too late for that as well, but I want to speak more today about some general principles, and some of this is going to be aimed directly at Christians. So if you are an atheist, just try to skip forward through that part because some of this, is definitely aimed directly at Christians, and trying to hold Christians accountable for some of this stuff that's going on right now. So that being said, if you can, please give this a like and a thumbs up. And I really would like to talk to you today as if you're sitting right here with me. So I've pulled up another chair. So yeah, pull up a chair with me and we got a lot to talk about. First thing I want to say is thank you to Larry Davidson. A lot of what I'm going to be talking about, not only in this podcast, but also in some other parts of my upcoming book about racism, he played a very big role in that, and I want to give him a shout out. He has an incredibly, insanely amazing story, and I look forward to having him on the podcast soon. So, anyway, that being said, all right, so one of the things that he told me, and it's gonna come up several times in this talk, is that when you do certain things, you give up your right to be offended, or you give up your right to be surprised. And just to give you a little bit of context, we were talking about, where I'm from in America, California. If you wear red, you could get beat up. So I probably shouldn't have this flower anywhere around here, but you could get beat up because that represents, I think, the North. I'm not even sure. It's either North or South or East or West, but it's seen as some kind of gang sign. And so basically the people there wear the color blue. And I was telling him how ridiculous I thought that was, because many times you'll have like Mexicans even beating up Mexicans, or the Crips and the Bloods in America, the black gangs. They're basically brothers, and they'll shoot or kill each other for just wearing some simple colors. I mean, it's ridiculous when you think about it. But he told me, well, if you go in there and you're wearing red and this, ahead of time, then you give up your right to be surprised about what happens as a result of that. And we could argue here all day that this was clearly a very idiotic thing to do on their part, to attack you. But the reality is, if you know the situation and you're doing it anyway, then some of this lands back on you. So it's going to come up a few times. But I just want to give you one example right off the top. This podcast is not going to be intended, as I said, to choose either side or to pretend like my poop doesn't stink, because it stinks just as bad as anyone else's. Okay, be very clear on that. So whenever I'm talking about this hypocrisy, I recognize that I'm fully capable of being a hypocrite. More than capable, I'm very frequently a hypocrite. And I very easily could have these same kind of dismissive ideas. But it is important to talk about them, especially as Christians, because this can be like a blind spot that can come up in many different ways in our lives. And so specifically, I'll talk about one part right off the top. And it's not to single out one side, because we'll get back to the other side as well. But yeah, sorry so much preface, but this is really important. But so there were a lot of people who were sharing memes about Kamala Harris wearing some really risque clothing and talking about her getting her job on her knees or on her back. referring to her, I guess, dating some married men or like sleeping her way to the top. Now, I don't know the validity of all that, uh, partially because I don't live in America anymore. But I don't know the whole background of all these stories. I can say I saw those pictures. These days, we don't really know how much is AI generated or, you know, just total fakes, photoshopped. But let's just assume that that is the case, that she was wearing these kind of clothes and she was sleeping her way to the top. Well, the thing is, the problem is right now, the right wing, the Christian conservative side, you've given up your right to be surprised or outraged over things like this. Because as it stands, one thing we do know for sure is that um, Trump, he has habitually cheated on his wives and left his wives for other wives. And so this is what's going on right here, including, cheating with various, porn stars or playmates. And so this is the reality of it. And this is not to pick on him or to smash him down. But if you're willing to get behind someone like that, and then you're also going to attack someone else for something that's done to a lesser degree, we have to take a step back and say, as the scripture says, take the log out of your own eye before you try to help someone with a little piece of dirt in their own eye. So, yeah, right off the top, it's like, if you're going to be the side of family values, if you're going to be the side of traditional marriage, etc., and this is the candidate you're going to support, well, you've lost some credibility in talking about Kamala or any of the Democrats. Yeah, so just start there. Start off with that one. Now, this is not going to, I said, this is not going to be completely one-sided, because now I'm getting one thing over to Kamala running with this same concept. And this is an absolute blowout, I mean, I've been watching politics for almost 30 years now of my life. I've never seen a defeat this bad. And a lot of people were surprised. But I do have to say that, again, the Democrats have given up their rights to be surprised or to be shocked or to be outraged that so many people, including minorities, decided to vote for Trump. And there's many reasons why. And this is not to pick on transgender people, but because I do believe that they deserve rights and respect, and we should make accommodations for them in society. But what was coming from the left wing was that there's not going to be any restrictions. There's not going to be any kind of checks and balances, just basically like a free for all. And there are lots of people like myself who were, willing to have conversations and willing to be advocates for these people, but because we might have an objection in one area or another and we want to have a conversation about it, we're called bigots and we're called hateful and etc. I can tell you this, I know for sure, I don't have any hate in my heart towards Republicans or Democrats or gay or bi or black or white, anybody. So, but on the other hand, you do want to make sure that everyone is safe and protected. And speaking of that, you also had a huge immigration problem that was happening, illegal immigration, and lots of thieves that are being allowed to basically do crime and just released right back onto the streets. So I am an immigrant myself here in South Korea, and I can tell you it has been a mofo to go through all the legal loopholes that I've had to go through. I can genuinely say it's cost thousands of dollars and weeks out of my time. Most recently, I actually had to go back to America with my wife when she was still pregnant to solve some stuff, and she actually had to have an emergency surgery. So I can tell you, man, our baby almost died as a result of that. So I have experienced this firsthand. This is not hypothetical to me. I've been given a exit order, meaning I had 30 days to leave South Korea, and also fined at the same time as well. So, I had to pay fines, fees. I mean, it's like you didn't stamp this thing, you got to go get this paper, running around like a chicken with my head cut off for days and days and days upon end. So, yeah, it's a bit frustrating. So, I'm all for legal immigration, but to try to just go from one country into the next without saying, screw your rules, screw your paperwork, screw everything, I'm just going to jump to the front of the line. I am very much against that. And in the last podcast, I was talking about, if you travel around Europe, you can go to the various borders where they used to exist and they don't exist anymore. You can just drive right through them, the old checkpoints. And I think that's amazing. Really, I think in the bigger grand scheme of things, this is what we should be working towards. But among the EU, they have screening processes when people come into their country. And they just enter in a country without any papers and say, give me X, Y, and Z. To me, that's very off-putting. And if you have people who are coming into your neighborhood and, they're also entering into your school and into your, hospitals, that's just an example where you can overload your, the resources that you have. And I know some of this might come off as like a little heartless, but I can tell you from, as a Christian who does a lot to help people in other countries, and even people who've been escaping here to South Korea, escaping the war from Ukraine and Russia, I can tell you that I sometimes give a little bit too much of my own family's money or time or food, and it can sometimes affect my own family. And so I think you have to take care of your people first, your family first, and of course you have the ability to take care of other people as well. So I'm not saying we shouldn't be helping people out at all, but there's a lot of people hurting in America right now, like badly due to inflation or recovering from COVID-19. So it seems to be that needs to be the first people in your priority on the top of the list. And then of course you should be helping people as you can. But if your kids aren't getting exactly what they need, it makes no sense to try to help someone else's kids. Like, you need to help your kids first. So there's that. I guess I should just go right back and forth, because now getting over to Trump, I just have to say this. A lot of Christians have engaged in egregious, outrageous idolatry. I mean, I've never seen idolatry in the way that Christians have recently gone in the direction of Trump, because a lot of Christians now are interested in getting the 10 Commandments into schools. And yet one of those 10 Commandments is about idolatry. And idolatry is people think it's like a physical object, like this, like I'm worshiping that. It's not actually what the Bible is referring to. Certainly can be that, but it's more the things you're putting above God. And so you have a couple of things here. It's this whole America First, which is part of like the MAGA movement, like Make America Great, Make America number one priority. As Christians, like, we got to get rid of this ideology that like America is above everyone else. You got the flag, the flag and the stars and stripes and the eagle, and mixing that iconography with the Bible is just flat out blasphemy. I mean, there's this whole God Bless America book and that they were selling, and Bible, I should say Bible. And to think that God is going to bless us more than anyone else is, there's something, I would definitely say there's something racist and there's something nationalistic about that. That, when the Bible was written, the United States wasn't even a country. So think about that, and then think about that it's fine to believe in leaders and to vote for leaders. I'm not saying you shouldn't vote. I certainly wouldn't vote for either of these candidates, but ultimately, one, I don't live in America. Two, so I don't have a vested interest, but I understand a lot of people there do. So at the end of the day, someone's going to be ruling you. So, I guess you got to vote with lesser of two evils, or I wouldn't do it, but okay, I get that people do that. So that is not so much a problem. The really big problem is the alleged moral superiority it's being, when you use this, who you're voting for, as an ability to attack other people, or to say you can't be a Christian if you support that other side. And unfortunately, I've seen people who I respect posting things that are basically saying that they're like, you have to be, if you're a Christian, you have to be voting this way, and that's just not true. But putting Trump above other believers, or there's just something, it's hard to believe that so many Christians have said, I'm willing to overlook every last thing that this person does, and in the face of blatantly anti-Christian behavior. Because I do have to say this, I'm sure I've said it before, but I have to say it again. As Christians, we have to be trying to prevent people and stop people from behaving in a certain manner that's very anti-Christian. So a lot of stuff he's doing and saying is anti-Christian, okay? So just one example, calling people names and et cetera. That from the Bible, from James, it says that we shouldn't even curse people who have been created in God's image, when it talks in there about the power of the tongue. So if he's out doing this to women or to his political opponents, Christians need to come and step in and say, hey, we love you, but this is inappropriate. Referring to Haiti as a shithole country, and trying to stop them from getting here, escaping the unbelievable, horrible political situation that's happening there right now. That's just not Christian, okay? It's not Christian. And so if he was being called out for this, and we're trying to pull him into the light, understanding this behavior is not appropriate, it's unbecoming as Christians, what happens if you don't do that? People just continue to get worse and worse and worse and worse. And I hate to make this comparison right here, because it's not a comparison between him and this other person, Diddy, Sean Puffy Combs. There's no, I could compare Trump to a potato, or this plant or whatever. And I'm not saying they're equivalent, but you can compare things without making some kind of moral equivalence. But in the situation that went on with this guy's life, you could just imagine this, when you're allowed to get away with stuff over and over and over and over, it just gets worse and worse and worse and worse. And situations like his, it's not going to get better on its own. So, that's not to attack Diddy or Trump or me or any Republican or any Democrat. Please understand where I'm coming from. This is the intention behind this. It's not that. It's that we should be trying to help each other and trying to stop people from the destructive behaviors that we're all engaging in, myself included. I could tell you I need help. I'll put myself top of the list right there. But to have Christians come along and to justify what I'm doing, even if they know what I'm doing, the stuff I do behind the scenes, if they were to know that and go along with it and not try to stop this, it's, we got to do better. Let's just say we got to do better. We got to do better that as Christians. Getting back over to Kamala, man. This is unbelievable. I've heard so many people say that she ran a perfect campaign. That is absolutely insane to say that this was a perfect campaign. I have to tell you this, that there's an interview she did with Fox News. His name was, God, slipping my mind. I think Brett Baer. And in my 40 years of existence, I can genuinely tell you this is the worst interview I've ever seen in my life. And that's not an exaggeration, because every time she was asked a question, she was finding a way to dodge it and to essentially revert things back over to Trump. And so I've said this now consistently for the last 10 years why I don't vote for either side is that the main platform that people are running on is vote for me. I'm not as bad as that other person. I mean, and truth be told, like, I'm not going to be a party to that. Like, if evil is going to prevail, it's going to do so without my help, period. So I'm not going to vote for you because you're the equivalent of a open-handed slap to my face versus a close-handed slap to a sock punch to my face. I'm not going to vote for you because you're your stainless steel samurai sword as gonna stab me, as opposed to the rusty machete that this other guy's gonna stab me with. I mean, if you're gonna stab me, do your worst. Let's just say, do your worst, but don't expect me to go along with, don't expect me to be a party to this. I mean, either side has corruption, either side. The problem is with picking these sides, please listen to this. If you only get one thing from this podcast, is that when you choose your superheroes and you say, we're the good ones, they're the bad guys, you're going to do two things. One, you're going to overlook a lot of the things that your side is doing. One. Two, you're going to be calling out the other side for things that you don't call out your own side for. So you have to justify the bad stuff, and then you have to find a way to even read into a lot of stuff that wasn't being said, okay? Because I do want to mention this real quick. And again, none of this is to defend Trump, because I was not defending Trump, but think about this scenario that went down. Trump was talking about Liz Cheney, and he said, let's give her these guns and let's get her to go fight this war, and have 9 people pointing guns at her head. Now, I showed some of my adult students this clip to show them what it meant to take someone out of context, right? So I showed them this little small clip, but then I showed them the larger context of what he was talking about. But right from the start, English as a second language speakers, one of the guys who's the lowest level in the class, he's like, oh yeah, I know what he's talking about. He's saying that she wouldn't be nearly as quick to go to war if she had to go fight the war. And like, I didn't get to have any of the conversation that I wanted to have with him to explain how they were taking that clip out of context. So anyway, that's just a really dishonest way of saying that he was threatening to kill this person. I mean, it's almost laughable, but it is disturbing at the same time, because it's just so dishonest, and you have the potential to do a lot of damage if you're doing this. Like, in philosophy, there's this concept of committing a fallacy where it's called a straw man, and you intentionally try to give the weakest example of your opponent's position so you could pull out a sword and just cut it up like a straw man. But at the end of the day, you feel strong attacking a scarecrow, but the scarecrow can't defend himself. And that says more about your own position, that you lack a position of moral clarity, that the only way to win this debate is to inaccurately represent your opponent. So, I do have to say that that's just really dishonest to do that. I mean, the stuff that Trump has said, talking about the size of his genitals in a debate, talking about people's hair and people's weights, and I mean, it goes on, and you don't need to take anything out of context. You got to present what he said. But on the other side of that, the other flip side of that is, it didn't really matter. It really didn't matter. You're showing what he actually did and said, because a lot of people from the right, from the MAGA movement, they just really don't care. I mean, they couldn't care less what he says. So it's kind of like a fool's errand to get involved in that. But moving on. I would have to say that I say a lot of bad things about Kamala, but I do think that even though she had one of the most disastrous campaigns ever, including not getting the free publicity that was offered to her by Joe Rogan and Dr. Phil, that's a lot of free publicity, and to reach that many people would cost tens of millions of dollars. And I guess she raised $1 billion and still somehow got 20 million in the hole. But you spend that much money and you still lose by a landslide. Clearly, you did not run a flawless campaign. People who are saying that, I mean, there was this lady named like Joyce, I think, no, Joyce Blair. God, I'll probably think of her name right now. But she said she ran a perfect camp. I think Joy Bear. She said she ran a perfect campaign, and then she mentions Queen Latifah, and she says even Queen Latifah endorsed her, and Queen Latifah never endorses anyone. Like, to me, and this is just honest, if celebrities are getting behind someone, that's more of a reason for me not to want to vote for those people. Because one, just celebrities, given the nature of what they are, they're in just a completely different category of people. In South Korea, they have a joke that says there's 3 genders of people. One is male, female, and the third one is celebrities. Because they're off in their own universe. They're not at all in touch with the common, ordinary people's struggles. They're pretty removed. And then, obviously, with all the stuff that has been coming out recently, we know they got a lot of other stuff going on in the background, whether that be, drugs or God knows wild party, God knows what else, man. Who knows what else is going on, But anyway, if you take a look at a lot of their personal lives, they have to go through rehabs and making god-awful, horrible music with horrible messaging or horrible movies. You have that. It's layer after layer after layer. So to think that you could get a whole bunch of celebrities to endorse you and think that should sway just your average Joe six-pack on the street, that's just mind-blowing to me. I mean, it's genuinely mind-blowing to me that you could think that that's a good strategy, that I could get a singer to come and sing a song and come vote for me now as a result of it. I genuinely can't even put that into words. But I did one thing I have to say about the way that she ended her campaign. I believe she ended it with dignity, which is a lot more you can say for Trump's last presidency when he lost. She wasn't talking about cheating. She wasn't talking about rigged elections. She was talking about, let's try to make this transition as peaceful and painless as possible. And the reality is that Trump didn't have that same dignity with Biden and his new administration. Because if you think back to the end of the Obama presidency 8 years ago, they helped Trump to, get in and met with him and help make a peaceful, seamless transition, which is the way you should do. This should be like, win or lose, we have to make sure that there's a peaceful transition of power and that, things are running smoothly. And I don't even need to get into the whole January 6th crap that went. I don't want to go down that, talk about all that. But obviously that was, no, I will talk about this. To the people who are saying that these people were just like having a tour of the, these buildings, that because there a lot of footage came out, these people walking around, and then they were talking about, they were showing like the peaceful people who weren't doing anything, but that is irrelevant as to the other people who were doing stuff. I mean, Tucker Carlson released this whole montage of that, and that is as disingenuous, as deceitful as you could possibly get. I mean, imagine if I showed you like Jeffrey Dahmer's report card, and he did really well at school, and then I showed you like his job review, and he did a really good job at his job as well. Like that might be true, but that's irrelevant to the other bad stuff that he did. So there might have been a lot of peaceful protesters, but that is irrelevant to what was happening. I mean, these people were attacking the guards, the policemen. They were chanting horrible stuff. I mean, they were breaking stuff, looting. This behavior, and including the kind of stuff that happened with the Black Lives Matter and Antifa, this stuff is just uncalled for. Like, we can't live in a civilized society and have these kind of acts taking place. Like, I mean, seeing that kind of stuff just makes me sad to not just be an American, but to be a human, like that. We have to get past the stage having, this kind of unpeaceful transition of power. This is kind of stuff that I would expect like middle schoolers to be doing. I remember when I was in 6th grade, and when we lost games, we used to line up with the other team, and like you go by and smack everyone's hand. When we lost, God, I cannot believe we do this kind of stuff, but we do stuff like either put tacks in our hands or spit on our hands, and like, so we'd get the spit on each other's hands. I mean, this is just, come on, we got to do better than this. We really, really, really got to do better than this. When we think that our children are watching our behavior, we have to do better than this, guys. And this is not directed towards either side, because both sides did wrong with this, and both sides have been steadily boiling up the rhetoric. And I do want to say, though, I do want to give Trump credit for one thing, because, and I genuinely wish that this happens right here, because as I mentioned, Kamala had those debts. He mentioned about the RNC, like maybe covering those debts, and he's like, we have to have unity. We're one country. We have to have unity. I mean, I remember after September 11th, there was so much talk about there's no longer right or left or white or black, but just American. And that's pretty much just gone out the drain. I mean, it's really gone down the drain. And I think the people who died on September 11th, whose memory was used as a uniting call for Americans, like, we really owe them. If we've used their name like that, I just genuinely think we owe it to them to put in the hard work, to really seek unity, and to really say, hey, you know what? We're on a plane. A plane needs a right wing and a left wing. Otherwise, it's going to crash. And this is hard for people to understand sometimes, because in the last 30 years, it's gone, just go all the way back to Bush, okay? Let's go right back to Bush. It went Bush, Clinton, the other Bush, Obama, Trump, Biden, now back to Trump. So it's gone back and forth. And this is so healthy. Like, guys, just about 100 miles up the road is a place called North Korea. And that is a place where one side, they have a one-party system, and you have the extreme left wing taking over. And then, you allow your side to go unchecked for 40, 50 years. All of a sudden, you are going to get a Nazi Germany or a fascist Italy, or, a communist or socialist China or Venezuela. It is so important to have both sides at the table, both sides listening, and both sides working together. And then, just having this checks and balance to making sure one side of the government doesn't get too powerful. I think the American system with the judicial, with the Senate, with the executive, and the Congress is just so amazing. And even having the Congress broken up into like the Senate and the House of Representatives, it is just such a brilliant and amazing system. And I do just really want to encourage people to say, hey, you know what, we have our differences. Man, I even have differences with myself. One, I don't always agree with the things I do, ironically. And then two, I don't always agree with my opinions from day to day. So, we learn and we grow, and we can learn from both sides. That's just the truth. Just recently, I was having a conversation with some younger people. And like, maybe you won't know this, but we were talking about how I was in a movie, and in this movie I had to have a gun. I got shot and killed in the movie. I was playing a Latino thug selling some guns, and I got killed as a result of it. Shows me, right? But anyway, when we made this this movie, I was telling about the special effects and the blood packs and the gun, and about how in South Korea, like they don't have they have like fake stunt guns, right? So they're like, it was rigged to make these explosions and smoke, but like it was just totally fake, you know what I mean? It was rigged up. And we started talking about the Baldwin shooting on the movie. I think it's called Dust or Dusk, one of those two. And I mentioned like Bruce Lee's son getting killed in the same exact way. I think Stephen Baldwin is the guy. So I know he has a brother, but yeah, Stephen Baldwin. And then I mentioned like Bruce Lee, and then she was like who's Bruce Lee? Like, she didn't know. Oh no, she didn't know she didn't know about Brandon Lee. And I thought, how crazy is this? This person doesn't even know that Bruce Lee had a son that died in the same exact manner that we're talking about. But she was only 21, and I started to think about this, like, I'm sure there's people in their 50s or 60s who lived through a certain amount of history that they would be shocked that I didn't know about this kind of stuff that they experienced, And so, I mean, I have these kind of experiences all the time where I'm like, wow, I can't believe I didn't know that. I've gone this 40 years of my life and I didn't know this fact or this word, I just had this happen just a couple of days, maybe about that same time, a couple of days before that. So, that being said, it's like we can learn from each other. Everyone has information that we don't have. It's as simple as that. You could go stop, a beggar on the street, and chances are he's going to know something that you don't know. Or even like a 5th or 6th grader. You might think you're 1,000 times smarter, and you probably are, than a 5th or 6th grader. But it's guaranteed that they're going to know some stuff that you don't. So keep that in mind. Okay. I'm trying to go back and forth, so I'm not even sure whose side I got to get to. But okay, I will say this. I think like 8 years ago, Trump didn't attend the White House Correspondents' Dinner that they have for like the journalists. And that was like just a really, really, really bad precedent. Right before the elections take place, just a couple of weeks, there's something called the Al Smith Dinner. And basically both candidates get together, and I'm getting chills just thinking about this. Because in the midst of heated campaigns, they get together and they make fun of each other. And, they raise money for scholarships. And it just, if you think about, like, just contrast that to Russia, or North Korea, where they kill people who disagree or challenge the people in office. I mean, it is just such a powerful thing. And the guy who got up there, his name was Hassan Minhaj. He's an Arab comedian, and he was talking about how powerful the First Amendment is, that we have that in America. And then he started talking about how Donald Trump didn't attend, and it's basically calling him like a baby, you know. But the point is that he just set a really bad precedence for that, because this year now, couple of things. One, the main presidential debates only had one debate, okay? Kamala and Trump had one presidential debate. Now, yes, of course, Trump did debate Biden, if you could call it that. It was more of a massacre, but there was one debate. And yeah, it wasn't the most cordial or civil debate, but there was one. Normally there's 3 debates. So just one, just keep this in mind. We normally have 3 debates. We had one debate with the main candidates. Second of all, not to let Kamala off the hook, because she didn't attend the Al Smith fundraiser. And this is just tradition, you know. It's like, I think when you try to think about what makes America, you know, have a common like identity. Yes, it's things like, you know, the flag or Christmas, Thanksgiving, all the things that we celebrate, the 4th of July. But these kind of, you know, events, it really helps to like solidify a common like ideology, something to get behind. And I really noticed this when I went to England about a year ago, that I had never seen the Queen as like the crown as like a good thing until I went there, and I got to truly see how people could rally behind that and say, you know, you might be a Democrat, I might be a Republican, but we're rallying around this common identity. At the end of the day, we're still under the same crown. Our money has this person on it. So, I mean, that being said, it's like not a perfect race, as they said. She should have definitely went to that. It's bad precedent. They should have done 3 debates. This is just sad. This is just taking down, you know, political discourse. It's lowering. It's bad. It's all around. Not 1 ounce of good to it. Like, we gotta be having civil discussions, and that's very sad. That is very, very, very sad that did not happen. That being said, another thing I will give Trump credit on is that he did attend Saturday Night Live. You know, and back in the day, let's back up a bit. Back in the day, Saturday Night Live was a force for good, and as far as the politics is concerned. They do a lot of other smutty, meaningless stuff, but the politics, they used to just go after both sides, you know, and not really, we're not going to pick either one, just we're going to make fun of both of you. And I really love this fact that used to exist, but now it seems like they're going way just to the left wing, and they're just going, I mean, you know, just going after Trump. Whenever he was in office this last time around, and Alec Baldwin again, I mean, he did an incredible Trump impression, but it was every week. It was the same thing. And also, too, I saw one Jimmy Kimmel, and for like 14 minutes, I saw the whole 14-minute clip. 11 of those minutes were just going after Trump. And like, the jokes weren't even that funny, because whenever you have to make every last joke about one person or one side, like, you start to lose material, you know? If it would have been like 5 minutes and 5 minutes and then 2 minutes of some, you know, other random stuff, it'd be easier to come up with material. But just it was 11 minutes just straight of making fun of Trump. Then they did like 1 minute just making some like general jokes about Kamala, and then Kamala and Biden, and then they did 2 minutes of just some random stuff. So it used to be a force for good. I will say this, that Trump did go on there some years back, and he did actually what the Kamala Harris did this time around, which is have Kamala come in and play. I guess she's kind of like playing her like another version of herself, because the main lady was playing her. So it's pretty, the irony of the situation is pretty hilarious. But anyway, he goes in there and he's playing like a janitor. So there's a fake Trump, and then the real Trump is playing a janitor, and he's basically making fun of himself. It's self-deprecating humor. And I think if we can have politicians who are doing this more frequently, and Saturday Night Live, and this talk show host, they say, hey, you know what, we could play a role in this, like we could make fun of both candidates and not do so to try to persuade people one way or the other. I really would like to see us getting back to that, because just come on, we're one country. In 2020, when George Floyd was killed, and I saw those riots that were happening and people getting killed and buildings being burnt down, I was like, man, I called this years ago, because during Trump's first the election, the rhetoric that was coming out of both sides, I just told everyone, I posted it so many times, no one listened to me. I hate that fact, but I just kept saying, like, you cannot just keep dehumanizing people to this extent and not think that it's going to have real world consequences. And that's all I want to say about that. Like, let's just take it down a notch, please. Please, everybody, please. We're brothers, we're sisters, we're cousins. I unfortunately had to cut off one of my cousins who was continually attacking me because of the fact that I wasn't supporting Trump, And it's not that I was supporting Kamala Harris. I would never do that, but I'm just saying, look, I'm not supporting either of these candidates. It's as simple as that. So, in his mind, though, he couldn't conceive of a world where I wasn't supporting Donald Trump. Like, I had to be that, or I was just like, basically going against God, the way he was putting it. But moving on, I do want to say that I really wish we could have swapped out J.D. Vance and Tim Walz in there. I much more enjoyed their debate. Their debate was so civil, so kind. They stuck to the facts. They weren't attacking each other. They're logical and rational. They're obviously attacking each other's platforms, and that's fine. That's okay to do. But you could do that without attacking the person in front of you. And so I enjoyed that debate. Speaking about going after people personally, it just boggled my mind that they went so hard after J.D. Vance, calling him weird and all kinds of other stuff, like taking stuff that he was saying out of context or too literally. But I would I don't vote. I don't pick either side. I would have happily have voted for a J.D. Vance, though. What I really would have liked to have seen is them put J.D. Vance and like Tim Walz as his running mate. I would have happily voted for those two. In fact, I thought about something. Flow with this for a second. Imagine this scenario. You got your president running against, or two candidates, okay? No vice presidents. No vice presidents. Whoever wins, the other person immediately becomes their vice president, okay? Some of this might be a little tongue-in-cheek. I don't know, maybe this could work. But after that, then they just take turns alternating the positions that they need to fill. It's a thought, I do like the idea though. Honestly, that was a bit of a joke. But I don't know. I would like to see. I would honestly like to see if that would work. I mean, that'd be an interesting scenario. But I would like to say that I think having people who are Democrats and Republicans in your candidates, is a good thing, and it shouldn't be just you're just listening to Republicans or Democrats. Having a mixed field of, mixed bag of people, and I just think that's a healthy thing. And wherever we will land politically, I just really hope that we could sit down and, you know, maybe just get off the internet, meet people in real life, and go out for a tea or a beer and just try to see where people are coming from, because everyone has have different, experiences, different real world experiences, and we're all being plugged into this universe together, and we may not like it, but until we learn how to leave the planets or the solar system or whatever, like we're stuck on this together. So let's try to make the most out of it and uh, take down the rhetoric just a bit, and specifically for Christians, like, please stop the idolatry. Please. I have seen so many atheists now, and so many like moderate or left-wing Christians who have said we're just completely giving up on the church and God and anything like that. Oh, specifically the atheists, they're saying, they see it, man. They really do. They see the kind of hypocrisy, the kind of double standards. And as Christians, I got to tell you, we're not fooling these people. We are absolutely not fooling them. So what's more important, like winning elections or winning people's souls and, winning people's hearts and minds? And for me, no political party is worth that, alienating people like that. So just please, let's give it a rest, and let's put God first again. And it's my last thoughts. Godspeed, and I guess see you back here again. So if you can, please share this. Honest thoughts, real thoughts, no politics, choosing one side or the other. Just let's get down and start to be civil again. So thank you. Goodbye.